We've been led to believe that cholesterol is a cause of coronary heart disease. But is that really true? Hi, my name's Tom and this is my carnivore life. So back in the 50s and 60s, there were two scientists, and I use that term loosely because one was actually a researcher, but we'll use the term scientist, had two competing theories as to why Americans were having coronary heart disease, which 40 years earlier didn't exist in the United States. So two scientists came up with opposing theories, and one of them won out and would shape our dietary guidelines and our medical recommendations for the next 50 years. So on the one hand, you had Ancel Keys. Now, Ancel Keys was a very strong personality, and if you opposed him in any way, he was a bully, and he would go as far as to ruin your career if he had to, just so that you couldn't oppose him. And his theory was saturated fat and cholesterol clog the arteries, much like they do in a drain in the sink, when you pour fat down it, and that was what was causing coronary heart disease. But then on the other hand, you had Professor John Yudkin, who was claiming that it was actually sugar that was causing the problem. And in fact, in his 1970 book, Professor Yudkin wrote that if we didn't curb our consumption of sugar, we would wind up with a society that was morbidly obese, full of cancer, diabetes, and many other metabolic issues that we are actually seeing today. So, Ancel Keys, you have to wonder why this lipid hypothesis gained ground. Well, as I said before, he was a very strong personality. So once he decided that the lipid hypothesis was correct, he went about trying to prove it. Now, one of the ways he did this was what was called the 7 Nations study. So he took 7 countries from the worst consumption of saturated fat to the least and showed on a graph that the more saturated fat that was consumed, the more there were instances of coronary heart disease. The only problem with this is that he didn't include all of the countries in the study. He cherry-picked the ones that fit his hypothesis. There were over 20 countries, and they were all over the map. There was nothing there that you could use to show that saturated fat caused coronary heart disease. And there were some subsequent studies that were done based on the Mediterranean diet. The problem is that was done right after World War II, when most of Europe didn't have a lot of food. So you also had autophagy or fasting that played a role in these people's health. So once Ancel Keys cherry-picked his data and published it, everybody ran with it. And I mean everybody. The news media, the medical community, even the government accepted his hypothesis, and we've been stuck with it ever since. The problem is, it isn't true. None of it's true. Our bodies require cholesterol. Our brain requires cholesterol. Cholesterol is the internal body's Band-Aid. When you get a lesion on one of your arteries, cholesterol is what stops the bleeding and heals it. Cholesterol is so important to our bodies that if you don't eat it, your body will produce it. That's how important it is. So how can you stand back and accept this nonsense that cholesterol is what is causing coronary heart disease? So let's take a look at the other side of the coin with Professor John Yudkin. Now, at the turn of the century, going from the 19th to the 20th century, sugar was highly expensive. And during the Industrial Revolution, they found ways to refine sugar that made it cheap. And that's when a lot of our processed foods began to hit the market. That's when a lot of the candies began to hit the market. So all of a sudden you have a society that only the very wealthy had these candies, cakes, and cookies. The average person might have a pie once a year or a cake once a year. They didn't have candy very often. In fact, sugar was so expensive that they hid it. They would lock it away in a secret compartment in their spice cabinets. So now you have sugar that is plentiful and everyone can afford. And now you have all these candies coming on the market. You have the Hershey bar, you have Tootsie Pops, Tootsie Rolls, M&Ms, Mars, Snickers. All these candies come on the scene about the same time between the 1920s and the 1940s. So, it stands to reason that during the 50s and 60s, after, 10, 20 years of consuming excess sugar, all of a sudden we have a huge spike in these different metabolic diseases. Now, the one thing that helped Ancel Keys was that Dwight Eisenhower had a heart attack. And everybody was all concerned because he was a very popular president, and they wanted to know why he was having a heart attack. So the microscope was put on his diet, and guess what he ate? A lot of cheeseburgers. And that fed right into the narrative of Ancel Keys. No one ever bothered to look at the fact that he smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day. Of course, back then, cigarettes were considered healthy, so no one thought to question that. And that was the nail on the coffin of the lipid hypothesis. And that's why we've been stuck with it ever since. Now, like I said, John Yudkin wrote a book in 1970. It was called Pure, White, and Deadly. And if you really want to know the history and what we're up against, that is an excellent book, because everything that he describes in there is exactly what's happening today. And it was written 25 years ago, longer than that, 1970. So that's 55 years ago. And he nailed it 100%. So I really hate when I see people, especially new people on keto or carnivore, and they go to their doctor and they have their labs done, and they come back and, oh, I'm so concerned because my cholesterol is at 245 or 300. Oh my God, I don't want to have a heart attack. What should I do? Nothing. Keep eating. In fact, new studies are beginning to show that older people, 60 plus, that have elevated cholesterol actually live a healthier senior life than those who have lower cholesterol. They have less disease. They have less heart attacks and strokes. So you really can't sit here and say that the cholesterol is the problem when we know it's the sugar. And the sugar industry knows it, and that's why they wage campaigns, just like you've seen with, calorie in, calorie out, eat smart, and it doesn't really matter as long as you exercise. And we've known since, probably back in 1800s, you can't exercise a bad diet. If you're consuming sugars and crap and processed foods, I don't care how much exercise you do, it's going to hurt your body, because we were never meant to eat those foods. We're meant to eat whole foods, and primarily meat, fish, dairy, maybe a few vegetables if your ancestors consumed those in larger quantities than the average population. But by and large, carnivore diet or any animal-based diet is going to be the best diet for humans, because that's what we've evolved to eat. That's what our digestive tract resembles more like a lion's digestive tract than a gorilla's digestive tract. If that weren't the case, we could go out in the yard and graze and eat grass, but we don't, because we can't digest it. We can't get the nutrients out of plants that we can out of meat. That's just how we're designed. So this nonsense that cholesterol is the boogeyman and everybody should fear cholesterol is just a bunch of BS. In fact, when they first started making the recommendations for cholesterol, it was at 300. Well, they weren't selling enough statins, so let's lower it to 240. Still not enough statins, so let's lower it to 200. So the goalpost keeps moving. And if there was definitive science on this, they would have set the goalpost and it would have never moved. It's like your blood pressure. Well, I shouldn't even use that example because that's changed over the years. Body temperature, there you go. We know 98.6 is our temperature. If you deviate from that one way or the other, there's a problem. And we know this, it's been known for a long time. But cholesterol isn't like that. They keep moving the goalpost. So what to do if your doctor tells you need to take statins? Well, you don't have to. It's your body. It's your health, and it's up to you to be your own best health advocate. Because let's face it, the doctors aren't going to get the training they need, and even the ones who do, I suspect, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect that if they deviate from what the American Medical Association is pushing out, that they run risk of some kind of punishment or maybe even losing their license. I don't know. I'm not in that part of the community, so I don't know what the repercussions of going against the grain are. I know there have been scientists, researchers, and even college professors who have lost their job or lost funding because their results didn't match up with what the industry that was funding it wanted to see. So it's no stretch to think that the same thing couldn't happen to the medical community. And when you take people and move them from the standard American diet to a keto or carnivore diet, all of a sudden they start to heal and they start to drop medications that they don't need anymore. And the more people that do that, the more money the pharmaceutical industry and big agriculture is going to lose. Why do you think all these big companies in the food segment have moved to the organic food side of things and buying up all these little companies that make organic whatever, protein bars, drinks, you name it, because they know that's the trend coming. So they'll gobble up these little companies, they'll make a few tweaks to the recipe to make it cheaper, and next thing you know, it doesn't even resemble what it was. And a good example of that was Kashi, the breakfast cereal. So when it was an independent company, they actually had decent products for what it was. I never really ate it because I don't eat grains, but it was organic, didn't have sugar in it. I mean, it was all pretty good ingredients from the vegetarian or the vegan side of things. But then they got bought out, and I believe it was either Pepsi or Coke that bought them. I believe it was Coke. Now it's nothing like what it was when it was originally introduced into the marketplace. And this is what happens. But people don't know these things, and so they get used to buying the product A, gets bought out by big conglomerate, the formula gets changed, they don't pay attention because they read the ingredients the first time they bought it. Why do I need to read it every time I buy it? Now all of a sudden it's nothing like what it was when they bought it, and it's causing their body harm because it has the chemicals and the dyes and you name it in there. So really trying to understand and navigate this whole segment of health has been really difficult for a lot of people because you really don't have any agency or organization that has a major presence coming out and saying, we got it wrong. And I don't expect that that's going to change anytime soon. Because if you come out and say, well, guess what? Since the 60s, we've been wrong. It actually wasn't cholesterol, it was sugar. Now, how many people have gotten sick and died, gotten cancer, died from diabetes? You name it. What is that going to cause? And who do you go after? It's kind of like big tobacco. Yeah, you can go after the tobacco companies, but it's the government, in bed with everybody saying this is the way we need to eat. And it's wrong. So what do you do? See the federal government when somebody finally admits that it's wrong? I don't see that ever happening. So really, it's up to you to educate yourself, do your research, fact check me. The data's out there. I'm not telling you anything that isn't out there for anyone to find. Buy the books. Look at what the data says, and you're going to come to the same conclusion I did. I've been researching diet and nutrition for 15 years, trying to understand why when I ate what I was supposed to eat, I got overweight and got sick all the time. And once I found the keto carnivore world and researched it, everything clicked. And when I started doing it, I lost weight, I got healthy. And now I'm back to the same health status I was in my 20s, and I'm 61, about to be 62. So I'm proof positive that it works. You don't have to believe me, you don't know me. But, you can't put stake into something that a lot of people now, and this includes researchers and scientists and doctors, saying it's wrong. It has been wrong all along. So really, like I said, you're your best health advocate. Do your research, make decisions that are best for you. Just because your doctor says, you need to take this, doesn't mean you do. They don't have a gun to your head forcing you to take it. If you believe that everything is normal, then don't take it. That's the best advice I could give you. And, like I said, I'm not a doctor. I'm not trained in a medical field. I do research. That's what I do. I look for, diet and nutrition research, any kind of study that's been done that is actual, studies and not questionnaires that they passed out, but real data in controlled environments. And this is what led me to keto and carnivore to begin with. Hope this cleared up a little bit of confusion for you. I hope you enjoyed it. Whether you agree or disagree with me, leave a comment down below. Let's get a discussion going and see where people go and see what people are discovering. Thanks, and have a great day.